Starwalker Studios presents Game Master's Journey, a podcast all about tabletop role-playing games from the perspective of the captain's chair. Welcome to Game Master's Journey Unplugged. Sit with me around the fire as I discuss what I recently learned watching another GM run a game. So join me on the journey. Together, we can become game masters truly worthy of the title. Hello, listener and fellow GM and or player. Welcome back to the show. Welcome to the third, I believe, Unplugged episode of Game Master's Journey. I'm your host, like Starwalker. So I just got done watching one of the Titan's Grave videos, The Ashes of Volcana, and I thought this would be a great topic for one of these little bonus episodes that I do every once in a blue moon. So if you don't know what this is a new show on the Geek and Sundry YouTube channel. This is done by Will Wheaton and the crew. If you're familiar with his show Tabletop, this is very similar as far as very high production, quality production. And but this is different because he is running a role-playing game. So it's like an actual play of a role-playing game, like what I do on YouTube and on Twitch and what lots of people do on YouTube and Twitch. But it's the kind of thing that we all wish we could do, right? With a crew and lots of time and know-how to edit and really, produce a very well polished production. I'm gonna stop saying production now, but it's really well done. And what this is he has come up with his own RPG setting, which he calls Titan's Grave. The world is called Volcana, and it is a science fiction fantasy setting. Seems pretty cool. I just kind of have the rough sketch of it right now. So far he's put out a short, minute long little teaser about it. And then he put out an episode 0 that I think was around 30 minutes long, where he talks a little bit about the world, the setting that he came up with. He talks a little bit about the system that they're using. And then the majority of it is introducing the players and their characters. So like I said, the world is a science fantasy world. There has recently been a very long kind of apocalyptic war and kind of dark age where now I'm wondering how well I remember this. If I remember right, it was a group that was very pro-science, trying to rid the world of magic, or it might have been the other way around. I don't remember. But anyway, there's this 1,000-year-long war. And this actually occurred after a natural disaster, which he describes as the sky falling, which kind of ended this golden age of high technology that existed before that. So there's this big cataclysm, and then that wipes out a lot of people, and then there's a war. And so this is kind of the stage that this game is set on. It has some of the kind of usual fantasy tropes in that you have humans, you have dwarves, you have halflings, you have elves. However, he has a Saurian race, which was actually the kind of master race during the technological age. They were very intelligent and they were very good with technology. So they're kind of like a humanoid kind of dinosaur kind of species. And so it's kind of a melding of science fiction and fantasy. I'm still not completely sure how that shakes out. From the art, I don't know. Is it going to be kind of Shadowrunny? It doesn't seem at all like Numenera, which is good. It seems like its own thing. I'm just not sure exactly what that is yet. So there was the session 0 where he talked a little bit about that. And then as of my recording of this, the first actual session 1 of the game of the campaign is out, which I watched. These are going to be coming out every week. I believe they come out on Fridays. And I am way ahead of schedule because I have a move coming. So I've been recording like a fiend, getting things in the can so that you still get content while I'm moving. So by the time you hear this episode, there'll probably be quite a few out. But what I'm talking about tonight around this beautiful fire here is the first episode, which was the first session. And I was really excited to watch this because after watching the session 0 where he kind of talked about the world and we met the characters and everything, it seemed like he was really excited to run this. It seems like he has a real vision for the setting and the story that he wants to tell. And I'm always really excited to see a GM run a game, a GM I've never seen run before, because I think that's, other than GMing yourself, of course, that's the best way, I think, to learn as a GM is to watch other GMs, especially GMs that are good at what they're doing. Watch them and see what you can learn. So as I'd hoped and as I'd anticipated, he did a great job, and I really did learn a lot from watching him. And I was so excited about kind of the insights I had from it that I thought I would share it with you. And none of this is groundbreaking. In fact, I think all of these points I'm going to share with you tonight are things that you've probably heard 100 times before. I think I've heard these 100 times before. But seeing someone do all these things and do it really well, it was a real eye-opener. So I really recommend that you go check out that episode so that you can kind of see what I'm talking about in action after we finish our discussion here. So I will have a link in the show notes for this episode at starwalkerstudios.com to this first episode that I watched. I will also have a link to the episode 0 if you want to have, kind of a little background about the world and the characters before, you watch this first session. So like I said, the episode 0 is about 30 minutes long, and the first session, I believe, is 41 minutes long. So they're not super long, and again, they're very well produced and very well edited, so they're very easy to watch. So the first thing I want to mention, the first thing I learned was actually from the session 0. He did something that I thought was really cool. And I've definitely seen games do this, Again, none of these things I don't think are novel or new or something you've never seen before. But again, it's just the way they all fit together and watching someone do it and see it really work. So the first thing was he said he does this with every game he runs, is he had each player come up with a secret for their character, something about their character that none of the other characters knew and that none of the other players knew. So he got together, and of course this is all on camera, but he got together with each player individually by themselves, and that's what individually means, I guess. He got together with each player and, asked them, what's a secret about your character? So each player shared something like that, a secret. And he said that just adds a level of, I'm blanking on the word, it just adds another level to the game and to the role-playing and the social interaction at the table, that everybody is coming to the table with one thing about their character that they know and the GM knows, but no one else knows. And then the other thing he did is he encouraged players to come up with a secret about one of the other characters. And I think the way this worked, because if I remember right, they really only showed it happening with one of the players, but he actually got together with 2 of the players, right? Because, you don't want to obviously just make up something about someone else's character that's a secret. You know what I mean? So it's a collaboration between the 2 players where they figure out something that the one character knows about the other character that no one else in the group knows about. So kind of a way to tie those two characters together. And the more of those you can come up with more characters, the better. You build like this web of connections between them. And I've seen other games kind of do this or try to do this. Numenera has connections. It comes with some part of your character where you get some kind of random little connection that you have with another character, and you have like 4 to choose from. But I think that the secret really does it better, honestly. I think adding the secret aspect to it and having these kind of mysteries floating around between the characters, I think really adds another element to it, which, I mean, obviously with Numenera you could make them secrets, but it's not explicitly, pointed out that these are secrets that nobody else knows. And I think that really adds a cool dynamic to the role playing. So that was the thing from session 0 is have each player come up with a secret about their character that nobody else in the group knows except for the GM, obviously, and then try to have these interactions among the PCs where certain player characters might know a secret about one of the other player characters that no one else knows to kind of tie them together. So I thought that was really cool. And then the rest of these kind of nuggets that I got from watching this all came from the first session. And I just really liked what he did with this first session. He did a great job of getting the game started, of getting the PCs hooked into something going on, and doing it in such a way that it was very fast-paced, and everybody kind of got their equal share of spotlight, and I just thought it went really well. Now, obviously, this is a produced program, so, I mean, sometimes you can tell where editing happens, and sometimes you can't, depending, if it's done really well, a lot of times you can't tell that an edit happened. But I'm sure... we saw 41 minutes. There's probably a few hours, right, of gameplay that was edited out. So obviously, we're not going to be able to reproduce this at the table because, we didn't see all the fuck ups and we didn't see all the things they cut out, right? So it's very easy to make an RPG seem really fast paced when you can edit. But still... I think in a way it's even more instructive to see this kind of edited ideal because it really brings it home how superior the pacing is compared to like a lot of the games that I play and run where it's very like it just drags and drags and drags, right? So I'll talk about pacing first because that was one of the things I was really impressed with. So he starts out, he had, as far as what he had at the table, and they weren't even at a table, they were playing the way I used to always play, where, sitting in like basically a living room on couches and like stuffed chairs. And, people had maybe, if you're on the couch, you had like a coffee table in front of you to roll dice on. If you're sitting at a chair, you had maybe an end table beside you to roll dice on. And like, that's how I always played until, now I play online. We never played at like a table because we wanted to be comfortable, right? And so the only things he had there was he had like a normal size 8.5 by 11 little notebook that he had his notes in. He had a smaller little notebook that I never saw him actually look at it. I think maybe he had some like stats or something in there. He had some note cards that he only used during the combat. And it looked like that was a combination of how he was keeping track of the initiative. And I think he had like the NPC stats and maybe even the PC stats on there. And then he had a screen that he just used to roll behind. And he had a few charts that he used because, I forgot to talk about the system. So this game is using the Age system, which is by Green Ronin, I believe. And this is used for the Dragon Age RPG. And I've heard a little bit about the system in the past. And then Will talked about it and kind of gave the very basics of the system. I have to say I'm not sold on the system. Basically, you are rolling 3 6-sideds to generate, obviously, a number between 3 and 18. So it basically works very similar to D20 in that you make a roll and you add a modifier coming from a basic ability score like dexterity or strength, and you're trying to hit a target number. The biggest difference really is that instead of rolling a D20, you're rolling 3D6. So, instead of that linear probability line, you've got more of the bell curve. And then there's another little mechanic where if you roll doubles, so like you roll 3d6 and say you roll 2 5s, then you get a stunt, and then you have one of the 3 dice is a different color, and if you get a stunt, then that one tells you what level of the stunt it is, 1 to 6. And then they seem to have points that they can spend, and stunts are like basically like criticals or whatever. So he didn't really explain how that worked. And so the one kind of game aid he had other than just a notebook and dice was he had a couple charts that he seemed to be referring to for the stunts. So it looks like in the game, and this is going to be a published game that you're going to be able to buy, that there's like tables of charts for the stunts or whatever. I wasn't super impressed with the system just because I think rolling a single 20-sided would be a lot easier way to generate that number than rolling 3 6-sideds, and then you got to add the 3 together. The doubles, it was kind of a cool way. I mean, you're definitely going to, when you make the roll, you're going to instantly know if you got doubles, right? But it's a little awkward, having to add those 3 dice together for every single roll and then add your modifier on top of it. But I mean, I've never played the system. I've never run it. I haven't seen a lot of it. So jury's kind of still out on that, but wasn't like super impressed with it. Then kind of a mechanic he added for his game is if you roll 3 6s, then it's something special, awesome happens that will be remembered for a long time and will be legendary. So I thought that was kind of cool, but it seems like that's going to happen fairly often. And in fact, already in the first session, it happened once. And I was a little let down with how he handled that. I mean, obviously he has to come up with something on the fly, but the way he described it, I kind of expected something a little more than what he did with it. But I mean, I definitely know how that is as a GM. Sometimes just a great idea doesn't come and you just have to roll with what you get, right? So back to pacing. So the way he started this out was he set the scene with a description, and it was very short. He didn't sit there and monologue and bore everybody to tears with like a description. He just gave a basic description of what they were, where they were, what they'd been doing, kind of what led them up to this point in the story. And then he opened the scene with them in a bar, actually, and the what do you do, and he had very entertaining NPCs that they interacted with, and every NPC, like it seemed like he'd given some thought to what this NPC was like. Each NPC had a distinct personality, and yeah, so I'm going to talk about the NPC specifically, so I'll wait on that. And he also had the important dialogue he had actually written out in his notebook. And I don't know, how much of it was written word for word or keywords, but it seemed like he was reading it pretty much word for word from his notebook. Now, obviously, Will Wheaton reads shit off note cards and stuff all the time. So he's really good at making that interesting and not boring, even though he's reading it. And I thought it worked really well. For instance, there was a part where an NPC, this woman was telling a story, and if he would have ad-libbed that, or if any GM would have ad-libbed that, it would have been kind of like, okay, whatever. But because he'd written it ahead of time, he was actually able to role play this woman telling a story like really well, and like this woman telling a story that people were getting excited about, which I don't think he could have pulled off nearly as well if he would have just tried to do it on the fly. So that was super cool. And again, like not a ton of prep there, just to kind of write out ahead of time what your NPC is going to say. And this also especially in the first session, it set that RP standard really high, right? It set that bar high. And I did see the players were kind of stepping up. It's like, wow, he's really going all out. He's really role-playing this character, and this person's really well-spoken. And kind of what was going on is, I think they called it a boast-off. But basically, people were competing in, like, telling tall tales. And so this woman told one, and then it was the PC's turn to tell one. And it was really cool. It worked really well. So he sets the scene, and he asks, each player, what are you doing? And so there were 4 players. Each of them kind of went off and did their own thing. And so he went kind of around the table, and he took each person and took maybe 2 minutes with each person just to quickly resolve what they did. One person went to the bar, ordered a drink, and had a very short conversation with the guy beside her. Another person went and found the owner of the bar that they were supposed to make contact with, had a quick conversation with her. One person went to the dance floor and impressed everybody with some awesome dancing. And it was like each person got a chance to do something, and he did a really good job of letting them interact with either the environment or letting them interact with an NPC, have a chance to do something cool. So the person, that did the dancing, even though he didn't roll like super awesome, like he story told it, like, he did this awesome dance and everybody was really impressed. Everybody got a chance to interact with an NPC or the setting and to establish kind of some character for themselves. But he did this, giving everybody a shot, giving everybody a turn, and he kept it short. Like it was like maybe 2-3 minutes tops for each person. And then as soon as he went around and did that, then immediately something happened. And this was the first like big kind of light bulb that went on for me. And again, there's editing, so maybe there was a pause or something there that was cut out. But I think I do a fairly good job of giving everybody a turn and not letting one player get more time than another, and not letting one player monopolize the story, or at least I try to. I mean, I can definitely do better, but I think I do okay with that. But when I saw how this went, I realized, I think where I kind of miss it a lot of times is I go around to each person and say, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And then once I go around, like, I kind of want to go around again, or I kind of want to give the PCs that chance to, well, maybe they want to do something else now. And usually what happens is either it kind of stalls because everybody's just kind of waiting for someone to do something, or then, you may have the one PC that always wants to monopolize time, and you do that pause, and then they jump in and they're off doing something and taking all the time. So what he did was he gave everybody their shot, 1 or 2 minutes, and then boom, instantly something's happening, and NPC's coming in doing something, and he's giving the PCs things to react to. And it was just such great pacing, especially for a first session. And I definitely, like, light bulbs went on, and I was like, okay, this is what I need to do. First session of a campaign, first scene of a particular session, go around the room, give everybody a minute or two to say what they're doing, or if they're not, fine, just go on. And then once you do that, immediately launch into something that happens. Give the PC something to react to, and it's just a great way to just keep things moving and don't lose your momentum. And so they had this cool scene in the bar, and then they went out to do some stuff, and there was a combat, and I actually thought that the combat was the least entertaining part of it, which it doesn't surprise me. I find that true with any actual play I watch or listen to. When you're actually playing a game or running it, a lot of the times the combat is kind of the highlight. That's when everybody's really engaged and having a lot of fun. But when you're watching someone else play, that's usually the least entertaining part. So the pacing was awesome. Another thing that I really liked is how he handled the NPCs. Now, the PCs only interacted with just a handful of NPCs in this short adventure, but each NPC was really well realized, either in their description, the description that Will gave of the character, or in their voice and personality, or both. So there were basically 4 main NPCs that they interacted with in this scene. There was the bartender with the obligatory Scottish accent. There was the inn owner, and she had this kind of funny, high-pitched accent. And then there was the woman who told the story and was kind of leading the boast off. And then there was this robot, which was an anthropomorphized keg named Keggy. I think of the 4 characters, Keggy was the least realized as far as voice and personality. He was just kind of, he was just Will talking, basically. But, they had awesome art for him, and he was better realized as far as concept and description, because it's like, oh, that's this robot that's basically a big keg with arms and legs and a head, So overall, I think all of the NPCs were really well realized. The human, we didn't get descriptions, oh, he's this tall and he weighs this much and his eyes, none of that. Which again, you don't need that unless the players want to know for some reason what color their hair is. The person of the NPCs was all gotten across by voice and personality. And by voice, I don't just mean like a voice, like an accent. I mean voice as in how they talk, how they express themselves, like voice in the sense that writers use it, not like their physical voice, if you know what I mean. So that was really cool. And that really drove the scene. And my takeaway from that, was not only is the pacing really important, not only do you want to have events that are going to happen or NPCs that are going to come forward and do things to propel the story forward and keep the pacing up and keep momentum, but you also want some PCs that are really well realized. And this scene, there wasn't really much to the scene, honestly. If you break it down to what happened, not a lot happened. But he had some really good NPCs, and he didn't let the pacing drop at all. And so it worked really well. And again, he only had 4 NPCs. And, 3 of them, the bartender had a funny accent. The owner of the inn, she had a funny accent. The woman that was storytelling, he actually used some vocal effects to sound like she was on a PA, like gave her some reverb, which, you might not be able to do that at your table. But she was pretty straight as far as how he played her. And then the robot was pretty straight how he played him. But, he had some cool art for him. And it's like he's a robotic keg, So the characters were really cool. They were really unique and they were engaging. And then finally, the last kind of big thing I saw from this was he was very much using a piece of advice you always hear given to writers, which is write what you know. Okay. And if maybe you're not a writer or you haven't heard this before, but basically what it means is, if you're going to write a book, write about things that you know about. So if you're a cop, maybe write about something about being a cop, or, if you're a truck driver, write about that. Or if you really like bird watching, write about like you don't want to go and write about something where you have to do tons and tons of research because you don't know anything about it, right? Especially at the beginning, you want to start with something that you know a lot about and tell your story, tell the story that you can tell with your experience. And Will was very much doing this with his game mastering and with, the adventure that he came up with and how he told that adventure or how he told that story. And I thought that was super cool. And it's such an obvious corollary. Obviously, write what you know. If you're a GM what you know. But I'd never really, I don't think, thought of it in quite those terms before. But for instance, I follow Will on Twitter and I read his blog and stuff. And so I know that, like me, he's really into craft beer. He also homebrews like I do. And that's like one of his hobbies. He's super into it. And so he really pulled that in to the world in the adventure. So they're in this bar and they're having a party because it's a holiday. And one of the highlights of this party is one of the NPCs who is a brewmaster is bringing a special edition keg of this beer that he only makes once a year for this party, and this is the only place you can get it. You know, so here he is pulling in something that like he's super into as a person and making it a big part of the story. And actually the kind of hook of the adventure was that the caravan that this beer was coming on was being attacked. And so that's kind of what the adventure was, oh, we got to literally go save the beer. And it was hilarious. It was fun. It was something that all the players could get on board with. Like, oh, yeah, we're excited about this beer. And, oh, you know, we can't let this party be ruined because there's no more beer. But, you know, he pulled in something that he knows a lot about, something that he's passionate about, something that he's excited about. And he was able to bring that into his game. And, you know, excitement is contagious. And the players were excited about it. And I thought that was super awesome. Another thing he brought in is obviously he has some experience with performing. And you saw that a little bit with the boast off, with kind of how he was describing things and how he kind of written out this little story that the woman told ahead of time. And it wasn't just like, and then they went and did, like, he, you know, she told a story in a way that like you'd want to listen to it, like in an entertaining way. So that was really cool. So all of us have interests, and we all have things that we know about that not everybody knows about. So as a GM, you know, think about those things. Think about what are things that you're really into, maybe hobbies or things that you've learned about that you're really excited about, and how can you bring those into your game? How can you bring those into your adventures? Because for one thing, it's going to be super easy for you to role play that and roll with that. Like me, I've used beer and stuff in my games before, and described, like, you know, where a lot of GMs you go to an inn and get a beer, and it's like you just get a beer and you drink it and that's it. You know, I'll tend to tell them, well, what kind of beer it is and what it tastes like and stuff like that, because that's something that I'm into. And for me, that's super easy to do. I don't have to agonize over, oh, what's the beer look like? What's it taste like? What's it smell? Because I can just like pick some random beer I just drank a week ago and run with that. Or, oh, what would be a cool dwarven beer or whatever. So we all have things like that. We all have interests and hobbies that we can pull in and kind of give some authenticity to the world and the game and the adventure. And I thought that was really cool. So yeah, check those videos out and see what you think. I'm really looking forward to watching the next one and seeing what else he does and see if I can learn something else from it. But yeah, it's really great to see someone who's really good at GMing and who really enjoys it. You know, I've seen a lot of mediocre GMs. You know, I've seen a lot of actual play on YouTube and stuff, and you know, there's a lot of mediocre GMs out there. I mean, I consider myself a mediocre GM. I'm not like dissing anybody. It's just like most of us are, you know, most of us are, you know, we're okay. We have our strengths and weaknesses. And you can learn something from people like me and people like that. But to see someone who just really kind of really does a good job at it, you can learn a lot. Even just, you know, these simple things like having good NPCs, keeping the pacing, write what you know. I mean, none of this is new. None of this is news to me. I'm sure none of it's news to you. But seeing all these things done well and seeing how they work together to create like this awesome experience, it was really eye-opening. So there you go. Go check it out. Check the show notes at starwalkerstudios.com. I'll have links to those. I'll probably just embed the one video right in there, because why the hell not? And if you'd like to reach me, you can email me at gamemastersjourney@gmail.com. You can follow me on Google+. Just look for Lex Starwalker. Follow me on Twitter at Lex Starwalker. And again, the website is starwalkerstudios.com. And you'll find those videos there. You can also find a link to the Google+ community at the bottom of the show notes. Also at the bottom of the show notes, you can find a link to our 30-day trial for Audible books. You can try that for 30 days for free and help me out. You can also find my Amazon referral link at the bottom of the show notes, which will help me out if you use that. At the top of the show notes, you can find the Patreon button where you can go to the Patreon page and become a patron. That'd be awesome. Or you can use the donate button at the top of the show notes and give me a one-time donation. Help me keep the power going to the recorders here. And finally, you can find the iTunes and Stitcher buttons at the top of the show notes, which will take you directly to the show on iTunes and Stitcher. And please leave me a review. I would really appreciate it. So I hope that you have a chance to play your favorite RPG this week. And I hope you go check out those videos. And I will be back next week with another episode of Game Master's Journey. Until then, game on.
This has been a Starwalker Studios production, your source for quality gaming and hobby podcasts.
This episode's music provided by Cloudwalker, Renfield, Transboy, and Ish. Please see the show notes for more details at starwalkerstudios.com/GameMastersJourney.